Tonight, you arrive once more at the threshold of the Midnight Library, the home of the philosophy of sleep. Rain drums steadily against stone walls darkened by centuries of weather, and thunder rolls far away, slow and patient, as if the sky itself is breathing in long, deep waves. You stand before heavy oak doors, the kind that seem to remember every hand that has ever pushed them open. You reach for the iron handle. It is cold beneath your fingers, polished smooth by the passage of time. You press down, and the doors groan as they open, revealing a hall lit only by warm, trembling candlelight. Inside, the world narrows to shelves and shadows and the soft glow of flame. Rows of books rise to a vaulted ceiling, their spines in shades of brown and black and faded red, titles stamped in gold that flicker and vanish as candles sway. The air smells of paper and ink and beeswax, with a faint, clean trace of rain drifting in through imperfect window frames. Somewhere deeper in the building, an old clock ticks with a precise, unhurried rhythm, measuring out seconds that no longer feel like obligations, but like gentle footsteps along a quiet path. At the center of this room stands a long wooden desk, worn and dark with age. It is scarred with faint cuts from long vanished quills, ringed by circles where cups of tea once rested, glossed in places by the weight of elbows and open books. On this desk, a single candle burns in a brass holder, its flame small but steady. Beside it rests a leather-bound volume of Stoic writings, pages filled with the thoughts of Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus. Next to that lies a thin book of Zen stories, simple paper tied with a faded cord, its cover marked only by a hand-brushed character for stillness. And there, directly in front of the candle, lies an object from your world, a modern shape among ancient things, your phone. It glows softly, resting face up on the wood, as if it has followed you into this timeless place. Its black mirror calls to you. Even here, in this sanctuary, you feel its presence like a small magnetic pull in your chest. A part of you is already listening for it, even as the rain and the candles invite you into silence. You notice how hard it is to imagine stepping away from it completely, even for a few hours. This is how it is now for so many of us. The thought of not having the phone, of being far from it, of feeling its battery drop to one red bar can trigger a quiet panic, a shallow breath, a tightness in the throat. Somewhere deep inside, a voice begins to whisper, "What if something happens? What if I need it? What if I am cut off and cannot get back?" The fear has a name, a new word for a very old anxiety: Nomophobia, the fear of being without your phone, the fear of being disconnected. But what if this fear is not really about the phone at all? What if the way we cling to that glowing rectangle, the way we feel unsafe without it, is actually a question about how we relate to our own minds, our own hearts, our own aloneness? What if the true disconnection we fear is not losing signal bars, but losing contact with ourselves? Tonight, in this quiet library of rain and candles, we will explore an idea that might change the way you look at your phone and at your own mind. We will listen to Zen stories about letting go, to Stoic teachings on control and courage, and we will weave them into a long, slow sleep story designed to loosen the knots of nomophobia and phone addiction. Prepare yourself. We begin slowly. The doors close gently behind you, and their sound fades into the hush of the library. The storm outside is now a backdrop, a soft curtain of noise that separates you from the restless city beyond. You walk forward, your footsteps muffled by worn rugs that run between towering shelves. As you move, the flicker of candles glide across rows of books highlighting words like meditations, discourses, Zen mind, no self, on tranquility, the way of emptiness. You arrive at the central desk and sit down. The chair here is sturdy, its wooden seat polished by generations of readers. As you settle, you feel the weight of your own body supported completely. The air is cool against your skin. The candle before you creates a small world of light. The edge of the Stoic book, the rough texture of the Zen stories, the smooth, glassy face of your phone. The windows behind the desk rise high, framed in dark wood. Raindrops cling to the glass, sliding down in slow, shimmering lines, catching the candlelight as they move. Beyond the glass, you see the faint outline of an inner courtyard, its stone floor shining with wetness, its trees moving gently in the wind. Each flash of lightning reveals for a heartbeat the wider architecture of this place. Cloisters, arches, a bell tower rising into the dark. You inhale. The smell of old paper is rich and comforting, like the memory of long afternoons spent in quiet corners with a book. The beeswax of the candles adds a soft sweetness to the air. Under it all there is the mineral scent of damp stone, as if the building itself has absorbed centuries of rain and slowly exhales it back. For a few breaths, everything feels simple. You are here. The rain is there. The candle burns. The books wait. The phone rests on the desk. Then, almost automatically, your eyes are drawn back to it. You notice a tiny movement, the screen lighting, then dimming, then lighting again with a small silent notification. That familiar symbol appears, a number in a circle. Something has arrived. A message, an alert, a reminder. Your chest tightens a little. Your hand twitches. You are not alone in this. Imagine for a moment a student of this academy, someone who sleeps in a room with high ceilings and tall windows down the corridor. They are lying in bed at midnight, the room dark except for the light from a single candle or perhaps a small lamp. Outside, the same rain that falls on this library taps on their window. They should be asleep.
They are tired. Their body aches for rest. But their phone rests on the pillow beside them, or on the table within reach, and every time they begin to drift off, a thought rises like a small wave. What if someone has messaged me? What if something has changed? What if I miss something important? They reach for it. Their thumb unlocks the screen. The blue-white light floods their eyes. A small clarity of anxiety replaces the soft fog of sleep. They scroll, answer, refresh, clicking through notifications like pulling threads in a never-ending tapestry. When the battery drops low, a new fear rises. What if it dies? What if I cannot charge it? What if I wake in the night and it is dark and silent and I am alone? This is nomophobia, the fear of being without a working phone, the fear of being cut off, unreachable, unable to reach others. It is not just a preference for convenience. It is, for many, a real and intense anxiety. The thought of leaving the phone at home, of losing signal, of a dead battery, does not just feel annoying, it feels genuinely threatening. The body reacts with shallow breathing, a quickened heartbeat, a restless scanning of pockets and bags. It is as if the mind has decided that without this object, without this connection, something essential is missing, and you might not be safe. Imagine a researcher who comes to this library to work late into the night. They are surrounded by books, by handwritten notes, by the rich history of human thought arrayed in these shelves. Yet again and again, their hand drifts to their phone. It sits beside the stack of journals, face up, its screen flickering to life with each incoming email, each headline, each algorithmically timed nudge. The researcher tells themselves that they need it for their work, that they must be available for colleagues, that they cannot risk missing an update. But if they look closely, they might notice that even when no one is depending on them in that moment, even when there is nothing truly urgent, the phone still commands their attention. The idea of turning it off, of placing it in a drawer, feels unbearable, as if they would be cutting off one of their senses. At its heart, nomophobia is simple to define. It is the irrational fear of being without your phone or losing access to it. Yet the simplicity of that definition hides something deeper. Why does being without your phone feel so frightening? What is the mind really afraid of when the battery icon turns red, when the signal bars vanish, when the device is left behind on a table somewhere out of reach? Centuries ago, long before the first radio signal, long before the first wire carried a message, the Stoics faced a different kind of anxiety. They understood the fear of being without control, of being at the mercy of events you cannot predict or manage. They knew what it felt like to fear separation from what you depend on: power, status, security, the presence of loved ones. They asked themselves a question that sounds surprisingly modern. What in this vast world of change and uncertainty is truly in my hands? Their answer became the core of their philosophy. There are things you can control and things you cannot. You cannot control the weather, the actions of others, the timing of events. You cannot control whether a message arrives, whether a storm knocks down the lines, whether someone far away decides to write or remain silent. But you can always control how you meet these things. You can choose your attitude, your judgment, your actions in response. From this viewpoint, the phone is just a new name for an old illusion. The illusion that if you are always connected, always reachable, you will be safe. The Stoics would gently point out that safety was never guaranteed. Not then, not now. You were always fragile, always temporary, always living in a world beyond your control. The phone did not create that fragility. It only distracted you from it for a time. On the other side of the world, long before networks and notifications, Zen teachers asked a different but related question. What happens when we cling? They watch the mind reach out again and again for objects, situations, people, identities, hoping to find something solid to hold on to. They called this clinging attachment, and they saw clearly how it leads to suffering. The more tightly you hold, the more afraid you become of losing what you hold. The more you tell yourself, I cannot be okay without this, the more your peace becomes fragile, easily disturbed by any threat of separation. From the Zen perspective, the phone has simply become the newest object of attachment, not because there is anything evil inside it, but because the mind has decided, unconsciously, that it cannot rest unless the device is near, charged, responsive. The attachment is not to metal and glass. It is to connection, to distraction, to a feeling of control over loneliness and uncertainty. Zen offers a different path, learning to sit with not knowing, with disconnection, with silence, and discovering that nothing essential in you is lost when the usual comforts are absent. Tonight, these two voices, Stoic and Zen, will guide us through the fog of phone addiction and nomophobia, not to shame or scold, but to suggest another way of being, a way in which the phone becomes what it was always meant to be, a tool, not a source of identity or safety. A way in which you can walk into a room without your phone and feel not panic, but spaciousness. A way in which the thought of being unreachable for a night feels not like danger, but like relief. But when we truly listen to what these philosophies are saying, when we sit with them as the rain taps softly on these windows, they slowly force us to confront an uncomfortable possibility. The fear of being without the phone might be hiding a deeper fear of being with ourselves.
As the night deepens, the rhythms of the storm settle into something steady and almost musical. Rain on glass, wind in the eaves, the faint ticking heartbeat of the unseen clock. The candle on the desk has burned lower now, its flame nestled into a small, gleaming pool of wax. Shadows lengthen along the shelves, pooling in the corners like ink. To understand nomophobia from the inside, we turn to patterns, not just definitions, but lived moments. Scenes so ordinary you may barely notice them, yet together they shape the texture of your days and nights. The first scene begins with waking. It is early. The light in your room is still soft, gray-blue through the curtains. For a heartbeat, as you float between sleep and consciousness, there is nothing. No name, no schedule, no list of obligations. Just the feeling of your body against the mattress, the warmth of blankets, the rhythm of your own breath. Then, almost before you can catch it, a thought arises. Where is my phone? Your hand moves before you fully understand what you're doing. It reaches to the nightstand, or under the pillow, or to wherever you keep it close. Your fingers close around it like a small, familiar animal. Only when you feel its weight do you relax, just a little. There it is. It is here. You are not cut off. You unlock it. The light is harsh against sleepy eyes, but you push through. Battery percentage, signal bars, Wi-Fi icon, all present, all normal. A tiny wave of relief passes through your chest. Then come the notifications, messages from last night, emails, overnight news, app updates. Your day begins not with your own intention, but with these small demands, each one whispering, "Attend to me first." From a Stoic perspective, this pattern quietly teaches your brain that your peace depends on external conditions, numbers at the top of a screen, symbols that show connectivity. Yet these are not truly under your control. The network might be down, the battery might be lower than you expected. Someone might not have written who you hoped would write. Each morning, you are rolling invisible dice the moment you reach for the phone. Zen would invite you to notice the craving beneath the action, not just wanting to check, but needing to check in order to feel safe enough to arise. The phone has become like a security blanket, a digital talisman. Without touching it, part of you feels unanchored. With it in your hand, charged and connected, you feel permitted to begin the day. The problem is not the checking itself, it is the belief quietly forming underneath. I cannot be okay unless this is okay. Imagine now a different scene. It is evening. You are at home, and your phone is charging in another room. At first, this seems fine. You are cooking, or reading, or talking to someone. Then, like a felt itch you cannot scratch, a thought creeps in. What if the battery isn't charging right? What if a message has arrived and you can't see it? What if someone needs you right now? You tell yourself you are being silly. You try to focus on what you are doing, yet a part of your mind is no longer fully present. It is across the hall, beside the charging cable. You picture the screen lighting up with each new alert. You imagine a small pile of unseen notifications building up like snow behind a closed door. The longer you wait, the more anxious you become. Eventually, you give in. You walk to the room, pick up the phone, unlock it, and feel the familiar mixed feelings, slight embarrassment at your own urgency, and a wave of relief that now you know, now you can see, now you are reattached. Psychologically, this is how dependence feels from the inside. The object, here the phone, has become intertwined with your nervous system's sense of safety. Without it in reach, your body anticipates danger, not in a logical way, but in an instinctive way. Your breathing changes. Your muscles hold a subtle tension. You listen for phantom sounds, imaginary buzzes. Zen has a simple analogy. Thoughts and cravings are like clouds across the sky. They move in, they move out. They thicken, then thin. But nomophobia turns a passing cloud into the entire sky. The thought, I should check my phone, becomes, I must check it, or I am not safe. The practice begins by learning to see the thought as just a cloud again. It may be there. You do not have to become it. Later in the night, a different pattern appears. You're in bed, lights down, intending to sleep. The phone lies on the table, slightly farther away than usual. You tell yourself that this is good, that tonight you will rest without it in your hand. But as you lie there, listening to the ticking clock and the passing cars, a kind of emptiness begins to open up in front of you. Without the screen, without the endless ability to reach out or be reached, the night feels wide and strange. Your mind, accustomed to constant little pings of distraction, now finds itself alone with your own thoughts. At first, they are simple, remembering something from the day, planning tomorrow. Then older things begin to surface. Worries, regrets, questions you have been too busy to ask. Who am I, really? Am I happy? Why do I feel so restless, even when nothing is wrong? The temptation to reach for the phone, to pull yourself back into the safe, shallow water of scrolling, can feel almost unbearable. This is how the phone becomes a shield, not just from boredom, but from self-knowledge. It is easier to read another headline than to feel an old sadness rising. Easier to reply to a message than to sit with the question of why loneliness visits you even when you are not physically alone. The Stoics teach that courage is not only needed on battlefields or in courts, it is also needed in the quietest moments, when you face truths about yourself and your life. Courage is the willingness to see clearly and not look away. Zen says something similar in its own way. Enlightenment is nowhere else. It is in this moment, exactly as it is, if you are willing to stay with it fully. Your notification bar, viewed through these lenses, is like a narrow river of cravings. Each new symbol on the screen is a drop of water saying, "Come here, be here. Do not sit in your own river. Come swim in this one." Over time, you may have learned to prefer that narrow river to the wide, slow current of your own life. It is more exciting, more instantly rewarding, less demanding of your full presence. But as with any river you wade into again and again, there is a cost. Your attention becomes fragmented. Your ability to sit quietly with yourself shrinks. You begin to believe that silence is empty, when in fact it is full of things you are not used to hearing. Imagine another figure in this academy, a teacher perhaps, who has spent many years within these walls. They remember a time before every pocket buzzed, before every hand held a glowing rectangle. They sit at a side table, grading papers, and as their students come and go, they watch the way each one enters the room. Eyes flick first to the nearest outlet. Hands check pockets as if confirming the presence of a passport before a long journey. No one seems to simply arrive and be here. Everyone arrives with something clutched in their hand, something that promises, silently, "I will not leave you alone with yourself." From the standpoint of modern psychology, nomophobia is described as a specific anxiety tied to the fear of being detached from mobile phone connectivity. It can involve worry, agitation, even panic when the phone is forgotten, out of battery, or out of service. But for tonight, we do not need diagnostic labels. It is enough to recognize the shape of the feeling in your own body, the way it contracts around the thought of being without the device. These are only small ripples on the surface of something deeper. To see the full depth, we must look at how these patterns, repeated day after day, begin to change what you believe about who you are and what you need to be okay. The library grows even quieter. The sounds of the storm soften into a background hum, almost like distant sea waves rolling onto an unseen shore. A few candles gutter and go out, leaving thin trails of smoke that curl upward and vanish into the dim air above. Others are lit so that the room remains bathed in a soft golden dusk that never fully brightens and never fully darkens. Now we look beneath the surface behaviors, the checking, the reaching, the constant monitoring, and ask what they are teaching your mind about itself. One deep effect of nomophobia is that it quietly convinces you that you are fragile, that without your phone nearby, you are in danger. Even if you are in a safe room, in your own bed, with the door locked and the world far away. The fear is rarely conscious. It appears as an unease, a sense that something is missing, that you are not fully okay. Stoicism points to a different story. It says that your true security does not lie in objects, not in tools, not in circumstances. It lies in the steadiness of your own mind, in your capacity to endure, adapt, respond with reason. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a person's refuge is their own rational soul. If you place your refuge in anything external, a fortress, a reputation, a friend, or in our time, a device, you will be shaken whenever that thing is threatened. If you place your refuge inside, in your own ability to meet whatever comes, you remain more stable, even when outer things change. Zen, too, sees you as larger than any object you cling to. It teaches that your true nature is like the sky, vast, open, unbroken by whatever weather passes through. When you identify completely with the storms of anxiety, with the little tremors of fear about being disconnected, you forget that you are also the space in which those tremors move. Non-attachment is not indifference. It is the realization that you can love, use, and appreciate things, including your phone, without tying your entire sense of safety to them. Another subtle consequence of constant phone attachment is the erosion of solitude as a nourishing state. Solitude becomes associated with risk rather than with richness. To walk without your phone feels like stepping onto a tightrope without a net. To be in a quiet room without it feels like being abandoned. The inner narrative becomes, if something goes wrong and I cannot call, I will be helpless. If I am alone and cannot reach out, I will be overwhelmed by my own mind. The Stoics practiced chosen solitude. They would withdraw in thought even in the middle of the city, reminding themselves that they could step back from the crowd in their own minds. Zen monks spend hours in meditation halls, facing blank walls in silence, learning to make friends with their own thoughts. Both traditions, in their way, suggest that the ability to be quietly alone is not a luxury. It is a strength. It is a sign that you trust yourself enough to sit with whatever arises. Constant phone presence can also blur the line between me and out there. When you are always connected, it becomes harder to know which thoughts are genuinely your own and which are simply echoes of the last notification you saw. your sense of self becomes porous, flooded by the concerns and emotions of others. Without the phone, some people feel an initial emptiness, as if their own inner landscape has not been tended, only covered over by incoming information. From a Buddhist angle, this points to anicca and anatta, impermanence and non-self. The thoughts and roles that seem to define you are constantly changing, and no single one of them is the whole of who you are. By clinging to the phone as a constant extension of identity, my photos, my messages, my status, you may be trying to freeze a version of yourself and your world that will always inevitably keep moving. The more you resist that movement, the more anxious you feel when the connection wavers. There is also the question of trust. Nomophobia often hides a deep mistrust of life, a belief that if you are not monitoring every possibility, you will miss the moment when you could have prevented something bad. This can show up as checking your phone repeatedly when a loved one is traveling, refreshing maps and messages just to feel that nothing terrible has happened in the last minute. It can appear as needing constant access to search engines, feeling that without them, you cannot navigate even small uncertainties. The Stoic dichotomy of control addresses this directly. It asks you to draw a line again and again between what belongs to you and what does not. The decisions of others, the timing of events, the accidents of nature, none of these are yours to govern. You can act wisely, lovingly, carefully, but you cannot guarantee outcomes. The phone gives the illusion that with enough information, enough contact, you can. Stoicism reminds you that this is a false promise. Real tranquility begins when you stop bargaining with reality and accept that some things are beyond your reach, phone or no phone. Zen goes even further. It suggests that the very effort to control everything, to hold the entire world in the palm of your hand, is the root of suffering. The more you try to manage every possibility, the more tangled you become. Surrender in this context does not mean apathy or neglect. It means recognizing that your life unfolds in a much larger field than your plans. You can be attentive and responsive without living in a state of constant emergency readiness. The phone is not the enemy. It is a mirror. It reflects the places where you have come to doubt your own resilience, your own capacity to be with yourself, your own trust in life. When the battery percentage shines like a verdict on your safety, when the signal bars feel like oxygen levels, something inside has forgotten a deeper truth. You were breathing long before these symbols existed. You navigated moments of not knowing before there was a device to consult. There is an older intelligence in you, one that knows how to rest even when uncertain, how to be present even when disconnected. The problem, it seems, stretches far beyond a glowing screen. It reaches into the very way you experience yourself, as fragile or resilient, as dependent or capable, as empty without constant input or quietly full in stillness. To heal nomophobia at its roots is not only to change how you use your phone, but to change how you see yourself. The library has become almost dreamlike now. You may feel your own awareness softening around the edges, thoughts drifting more slowly like leaves floating down a slow river. The candle on the desk is low, but someone has lit a fresh one nearby, so the circle of light continues. The rain outside is steady and gentle, as if it has decided to sing you to sleep. In this softened state, we turn more deeply to practice, not in the sense of effort and struggle, but in the sense of a path you can walk with small, easy steps, night after night. At the far end of the library, Near a bay window where the glass curves outward like a quiet wave sits an old armchair upholstered in dark green fabric. In that chair, imagine a figure, not quite Marcus Aurelius, not quite a Zen monk, but a kind of librarian philosopher whose voice carries threads of both traditions. Their presence is calm, unhurried. They gesture softly for you to come closer. You sit nearby, perhaps on the low ottoman or on a cushion on the floor. The philosopher's face is lit by the nearby candle, lines of age etched around their eyes, not with worry, but with the softness that comes from long practice in watching the mind. They speak, and their words are simple. You fear being without your phone, because somewhere along the way, you began to believe that your safety, your connection, even your sense of self depend on this device. Tonight, let us question that, gently. They begin with the Stoic teaching you have already touched, the dichotomy of control. Imagine a circle drawn around you. Inside the circle are things you can influence directly: your choices, your efforts, your values, the way you choose to interpret events. Outside the circle are all the things you cannot fully control: the weather, the economy, other people's actions, the timing of messages, the stability of networks. They pause, letting you picture this circle. Where does your phone belong? Not the way you use it, but its functioning, its battery life, its connection, the arrival of messages. You can see it clearly now. All of that lies outside your circle. You can charge it, yes, you can care for it, but you cannot guarantee it will not fail. You cannot force a message to arrive. You cannot ensure that there will never be a moment when the device is gone, off, or out of reach. When you base your peace on something outside your control, the philosopher continues, you hand your tranquility to chance. The Stoic way is different. We do not deny that it is pleasant when things work, when connections are stable, but we refuse to make our inner state depend on what we cannot command. How does this help you with your phone? They ask, tilting their head slightly. It helps by inviting you to shift your focus. Instead of obsessing over whether the device is present, charged, and connected, you turn your attention to what is always yours, your response. When you notice fear rising because the battery is low or the signal is gone, you can ask, in a very quiet way, what is in my control right now? You can choose to breathe more slowly. You can choose to reassure yourself, even without this phone, I am still here. I can still think. I can still ask for help from those nearby. I have lived through uncertainty before. You can choose to see this moment not as disaster, but as an invitation to practice. Every time you do this, the philosopher says, you are building your inner citadel, a place within you that remains calm even when the outer forts crumble. The phone may be lost, broken, or far away, but your capacity to meet that situation with courage and reason remains. Then their voice takes on a slightly different tone, more spacious, more like wind through pine trees. From the Zen side, they say, we look not only at what you can control, but at how you cling. You cling to the phone not because you are weak, but because the mind has learned to fear open space. In every moment when there is nothing to hold, no call, no message, no browser to tap, the mind feels naked. It rushes to cover itself with activity. Zen asks a radical question, they continue. What happens if just for a breath you do not rush? If the urge to reach for the phone arises and you simply watch it, the way you might watch a wave swell and break on the shore. They invite you to imagine this. You are sitting somewhere, perhaps here, in the library, perhaps in your real room. Your phone is nearby.
Suddenly, you feel the familiar impulse, I should check it. In that moment, instead of acting, you label the impulse softly, wanting. You feel the physical sensations that accompany it, a slight leaning forward in the body, a tension in the hands, a quickening in the chest. You do not scold yourself. You do not congratulate yourself. You just watch. After a few seconds, the intensity shifts. Maybe it grows stronger for a moment, then weaker. Maybe it is replaced by another thought. This is silly, or I'll just look once. Each time you notice. Each time you remain, for a little longer than before, in your own seat, in your own breath, without moving toward the device. This is non-attachment, the philosopher explains. It does not mean pushing the phone away forever or never using it. It means not being dragged around by every impulse to use it. It means you hold the device lightly, open-handedly. When it is there, you use it wisely. When it is not, you do not fall apart. They lean back, letting the chair creak softly. There is a Zen story, they say, about a monk who was given a small bell to call him to meditation. At first, he loved it. It told him when to sit, when to eat, when to rest. Then, over time, he began to feel anxious whenever he could not hear it. If he walked far from the bell, he worried he would miss the sound and fail in his duty. One day his teacher took the bell away and said, "Let your own heart be your bell." The philosopher smiles. Your phone is like that bell. At first, it was a tool to help you connect, to organize, to remember. Slowly, it became your master, and you became its servant. The cure is not to smash the bell, but to remember that you have within you something far more reliable than any device, a heart, a mind, an inner sense of timing and value. Then they draw the two paths together. Stoicism asks again and again, what is truly up to you? Zen asks again and again, who are you really when you are not holding on to anything? Both converge on the same point. Your freedom lies not in the state of your phone, but in the state of your relationship to it. They give examples, turning each one slowly, like crystals catching candlelight. At work, when you feel compelled to check your phone every few minutes just in case, you can choose to set it in another room for a half hour and observe what arises. At home, when you feel the urge to scroll through every quiet moment, you can choose to allow one of those moments to be empty, feeling it from the inside instead of rushing to fill it. On a walk, you can choose once in a while to leave the phone behind and let the first few minutes of discomfort bloom and fade without obeying it. Each choice is small, the philosopher says softly, but together they form a path away from reflex and toward freedom. They return to the Stoic question that has become our refrain. This forces us, you and I, to reconsider a simple but radical question. What in this exact moment is truly under your control? Not the network, not the opinions of others, not the whereabouts of your phone once it is lost. But your breath? Yes. Your decision to tighten around fear or to soften into it? Yes. Your willingness to remember that you are more than this momentary anxiety? Yes. You feel these words not just as information, but as a kind of gentle weight, grounding you. You are not being asked to do anything dramatic tonight, only to see more clearly, to notice the stories you have been telling yourself about your dependency, to entertain, even briefly, the possibility that you might be more resilient, more spacious, more at peace than you have yet allowed yourself to believe.
They say you are allowed to sleep through messages. You are allowed to turn off your phone. You are allowed to walk down a street without it. You are allowed to exist without broadcasting, without checking, without sharing, for long stretches of time. Safety does not only come from being continuously connected. There is another kind of safety that comes from knowing, even when no one can call me, I am still here. I still breathe. I still have my own awareness. I am not disappearing. They mention gently that research in sleep and mental health has begun to confirm what these old traditions knew intuitively. Creating a small, consistent ritual around putting devices away before bed reduces anxiety, improves sleep quality, and helps the body remember how to relax. Not with complicated steps, but with soft repetition. Each night, the act of placing the phone in a resting place becomes a signal to your nervous system. The day's vigilance is over. It is time to let down the guard. Tonight, the philosopher says, over these hours, this ritual quietly becomes yours. You do not have to perfect it. You do not have to do it every night from now on without fail. But even doing it once with awareness plants a seed. Your body remembers. Your mind remembers. The next time you consider sleeping with the phone in your hand, something in you will recall the feeling of setting it down, walking away, and discovering that the world did not end. They fall silent now, leaving you with the rain, the candles, the vast breathing quiet of the library. The minutes lengthen, stretch, and blur. Your thoughts grow slower, farther apart, like distant lanterns on a long road. The phone is elsewhere. You are here, and that is enough. At this depth of night, words become softer, lighter, more like feathers than like stones. The library around you feels almost like a dream, and perhaps you have already crossed that threshold, drifting in and out of sleep while the story continues to murmur in the background. This is the time for the simplest, deepest questions, not to answer them with the mind's usual sharpness, but to let them echo inside you. Who are you when no one is watching, when no one is texting, when no one is scrolling you? Without the phone vibrating in your pocket, without messages lighting up your screen, without the subtle confirmation that you are in others' thoughts every few minutes, who remains? When you sit alone in a room, unreachable, the device turned off in another place, the network's quiet to your senses, there's still something present, a knowing, an awareness, the feeling of being. That awareness is not an app. It is not a signal. It does not come from towers or satellites. It has been with you since before the first call you ever made. It will be with you in every moment of your life until your last. The Stoics would call this your ruling faculty, your inner guide, your reason. The Zen teachers might call it just this, suchness, the bare fact of experience. We do not need complicated names tonight. It is enough to feel that there is a you that is prior to all notifications, that you are not created and destroyed with each buzz. What if the quiet between notifications is where real life actually unfolds? Imagine your day as a long scroll of moments. Many of them are punctuated by alerts, a sound, a flash, a vibration. Between these, there are gaps, small spaces where nothing is happening in digital terms. These gaps are often where your attention slips, looking for the next hit of stimulation. Yet they are also where you actually meet the world with your own senses. The warmth of a mug in your hands, the way someone's eyes crinkle when they smile, the texture of pages under your fingers. the pattern of light on your floor in the afternoon, the feeling of your legs carrying you up a hill. These things do not announce themselves with badges and banners. They are quiet. They live in the spaces that Nomophobia teaches you to fear, the spaces without contact. Zen suggests that awakening is not found in special experiences, but in the ordinary ones you usually overlook. If every unfilled second is immediately colonized by a glance at your phone, you may never fully taste your tea, never fully feel your own steps, never fully inhabit your own breath. To love the quiet between notifications is to reclaim these pieces of your life. What if you are already enough, even in complete stillness? When you do not post, when you do not respond, when you do not refresh, are you less real, less valuable, less you? From the viewpoint of these traditions, the answer is gently, firmly, no. Your worth does not flicker on and off with your online activity. A tree in a forest unseen by anyone is still a tree. It still drinks water, breathes, reaches for light. In the same way, you, in a quiet room with your phone far away, still live, still feel, still matter. For Stoicism, your value lies in your capacity to act with virtue, with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. None of these require a working phone. For Zen, your value is not something you acquire at all. It is the fact that you are an expression of reality itself, no more, no less than a raindrop or a mountain. For these traditions, the deepest freedom is not out there, in a perfectly digitized or de-digitized life. It is in here, in how you relate to each thought, each urge, each ping, each silence. Freedom is not never feeling the impulse to check. It is feeling the impulse and knowing that you can choose. It is being able, at least sometimes, to let the phone ring into emptiness, to let the notification sit unopened, to let the battery run down without your inner world collapsing. Picture now a world where nights once again belong mostly to rest, where bedrooms are less full of blue light and more full of shadows and soft lamps, where it is expected, not unusual, to be unreachable for 8 hours. In that world, people still care for one another. They still respond to messages. They still stay informed.
But they also trust that life can hold them, even when they are not instantly available. Picture a mind that can feel the urge to check the phone, smile kindly at it, and then return to the page of a book, or to a conversation, or to the simple act of listening to rain. The urge is no longer a command. It is just one visitor among many in the house of your mind. Imagine the midnight library as it will be after you leave. The phone, perhaps, will remain on the side table, resting. The candles will burn down to puddles of wax. The rain will eventually stop. The dawn will come in pale gray through the windows. The books will still be here, filled with the words of people who lived entire lives, full and meaningful, without ever once carrying a phone. Inside you, this library is being built as well. A place you can return to whenever you choose. A place where, at the end of the day, you can walk in, set down your device, and sit among your own thoughts like old friends. The only notifications there are the natural ones, the body's call for rest, the mind's sigh of relief, the heart's slow untightening. The most profound shift begins when you realize you are allowed to be unreachable and still be completely safe. You are allowed to be here, in this breath, and nowhere else. You are allowed to let your attention narrow to this single inhale, this single exhale, trusting that the world beyond your walls can move without you for a while. You are allowed to be here, in this breath, and nowhere else. Let those words be the last firm stepping stone before you slip fully into sleep. Now the night's long arc has nearly completed itself. The 3 hours we set aside for this journey have flowed past, like the rain that has been falling unseen beyond the library windows. The candles are small and low. The room is mostly shadows now, with just enough light to trace the edges of shelves and the curve of the desk. We began with the familiar unease, the restless need to keep your phone nearby, the tightness that appears at the thought of being without it, the way your hand reaches for it almost before you know you are awake. We gave that unease its name, Nomophobia, and we felt how real it can be in your own body. Then we walked slowly through the teachings of Stoicism and Zen. We listened as they gently untangled the knot that ties your safety to a device. We learned to distinguish what is in your control, your breath, your judgments, your choices, from what is not, batteries, networks, the actions of others. We practiced watching the urge to check the phone as just that, an urge, a passing wave, not an order that must be obeyed. We built a small ritual together in this midnight library, placing the phone down, moving it away, feeling the first tremors of anxiety, and then feeling something else emerging underneath. Space, quiet, a sense that you remain whole even when you are not holding the world in your hand. Perhaps, somewhere in these hours, a new understanding began to form. Perhaps the fear of being without your phone was, in part, a fear of being with yourself. Here, in the silence, without constant signals from outside, you meet your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own presence. This can be unsettling at first. It can feel like stepping into a dark room. But as your eyes adjust, you see that the room is not empty. It is furnished with everything you truly are. There are no perfect answers, no instant cures. Some nights you will still sleep with the phone too close. Some days you will still feel your heart race when you cannot find it. This is not a failure. It is simply part of the path. What you have now are practices, not rules, not punishments, but small, kind habits you can return to whenever you remember. You can remember to ask, what right now is truly under my control? You can remember to set your phone a little farther away at night. You can remember that silence is not empty. It is where you return to yourself. You can remember that you are already enough even when you are not available, not online, not responding. The world can wait. Your mind can rest. Tonight, as you drift deeper into sleep, philosophy watches over you, not as a stern judge, but as a quiet companion, sitting in a chair nearby in the candlelight, content simply to share the room while you breathe. Let the last remnants of waking thought dissolve now, like the last drops of rain on stone. All that remains is your breath, moving in and out, and the deep, generous darkness of rest. Sleep.